Yeah, good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. This is CIS Chartered Institute of Stockbrokers live class lecture for Level 1, Paper 1. Thank goodness, Starry Gold Academy has been very magnanimous in getting us this wonderful package in preparation for March 2019 examination diet of the Institute. The objective of this particular live class is to assist the students in their preparation for the exams by encouraging them on the following. Number one, that their success in the exams is possible contrary to any information or fear they might have been nursing. Number two, to imbibe in the students the confidence that passing the examination is something that is doable and in fact on record time. Number three, to give them examination techniques and strategies in view of the time constraints and the usual exams fever, and to encourage them to trust in God for success after they might have put in their best preparation possible for the examination. Now, let's pick up straight away. Level 1, Paper 1, which is what we are considering today. Examination. Except for maybe the names of the characters there, they may just change. Might be Jide here may be changed to Jalulu, or might be ABC Limited may be changed to XYZ, as the case may be. But basically, all the question is the same thing as it was in the past examination. So the answer, if this exam is the same thing, it means the answer is the same thing. So this is the essence of having these past questions, on your fingertips. Then you also have to manage your time very well in the examination. This one I call time management. 100 marks exams for 3 hours will give you an average of 1.8 minutes for each mark. And what am I trying to say? In other words, any question that carries 10 marks, the maximum time you can spend on that question will be 80 minutes. And in fact, I always advise my students that in such a situation, see yourself spending an average of 1.5 minutes each question. In other words, for any 10 marks question, the maximum time you are going to spend will be 50 minutes. And if that is the case, then you have to ensure that you do not exceed that time you have set for yourself, even ahead of the examination, so that 3 minutes you have left will be utilized to read over your work. Why? Because there's what we call slip of tongue or slip of biro, as the case may be. An ordinary is or not can make a lot of difference. It will give a total different meaning to what you have in mind. And mind you, nobody speaks for you. Whatever you put down is what the examiner or the assessors will mark. Hence, it's very, very important, very, very vital for you to have little time to read over your work when you are finished before you submit your examination answer scripts. And perhaps there are some questions you couldn't understand in the course of the examination. It's very important at movement along the line, like I said, and of course, for shift in demand. Also, you must be able to remember, what are the factors responsible for movement along the line, that's for supply, and of course, the shift in demand, in supply of the product. For instance, it could be the weather, it could be the technology, and things like that. All these are very, very germane that you must bear in mind. And of course, when you have what we call cross elasticity of demand, what could be responsible? So it's very, very important. And still on this theory of demand and supply, you must also take note of something I call utility in this case, which talks about the satisfaction that consumer demand derives from the product. And there we talk about the marginal utility, that is additional utility, which the consumer derives in the product, and that goes a long way. You should not forget as well what we normally refer to as diminishing marginal utility. It's very, very crucial for you to bear that in mind. And of course, still on that, we have what we call the indifference curve, which of course has to do with utility as well. That is the marginal utility. That is what the customer or consumer actually derives. I also want to mention quickly, which is area that is also has been tested, and of course is being tested in almost all the various past examination questions, is the theory of production. The theory of production, all right, is very important for you to know what are the things that are actually relevant in this case. When we're talking about the theory of production, talking about the various production factors or factors of production, as the case may be, you have the labor, you have the capital, you have the entrepreneur, and of course, for each of them, what is the relevant thing that is expected, from each of them, or the theory of production, like I've mentioned. So, for instance, if it is capital, we'll be talking about, the interest that is that's accruable. Okay. If it is labor, you bear in mind if it is labor, you have to bear in mind what comes to him, what comes to him as a labor, and ditto for capital and the entrepreneur, which we refer to as the profit that comes in to the person. So all these things are very relevant, and you must know. Then one other thing that is very important here on the theory of production is average production, average product cost, total product cost, marginal product cost. Here we see what we call marginal revenue, total revenue, and all that. And of course, where total revenue is equal to total cost, what happens? That we call it equilibrium. So you must bear in mind. what is the equilibrium position. So we also want to remind you that you should bear in mind, what actually happens on the market structure. On the market structure, we talk about the perfect competitive market, where the customer is actually the price taker. We talk about these various oligopoly, monopoly, and all that. We ensure you try and revise all these various things. What is the need? Why is it necessary? What is the necessity? The imperativeness of having knowledge of all this? Because the multiple question, one thing or the other, they will bring up the question in such a way that these principles will be tested. So it's now left for you to know, for instance, what is being tested. Typical example, when we talk about maybe a market whereby there's a free exit, free entry, that definitely what readily comes to your mind is that, this is perfect competitive market. And the situation whereby the question is talking about a scenario whereby you have only a single producer, and what are likely demerits of such a thing. Definitely such a thing that is monopoly, you should bear in mind. And if that is the case, what are the various characteristics? What are the merits? Some questions may come up and be asking to test your knowledge of that. And they will bring the question in such a way. But usually, like I've said, at this level, being objectives, by the time you go through the various options, of course, the questions, you have idea what and what, where you have prepared well for the examination, not somebody that is trying to gamble for the examination. It is important for you to ensure that you have a very sound knowledge of all these things. Revise them, watch your video over and over, master the various basic principles, and I have no doubt in my mind that the examination will be a walkover by the grace of God. So let's quickly look at the second part, the second aspect of the question of economics and financial markets. In this second part, they test the macroeconomic analysis, which look at the entire global, markets, the economy, and what is it actually looking at. This macro, we talked about the economy as a whole. It concentrates on issues such as the aggregate demand, for instance, aggregate supply, for instance. You're trying to look at the determination of the total output of the economy. You're looking at the inflations in the economy, the money and banking sector in the economy. Was the role of the central bank, for instance, and the other banks, commercial or development banks in the economy. The growth of the whole economy, economic growth and developments. So these are the various things that you need to bear in mind as you look at this aspect in your preparation. And of course, I've come across situations whereby questions are set differently. Even the same question, they may just twist it here, twist it there, just to confuse the students. So if you have prepared well, and of course, like I said, familiarize yourself with past question and answers, and of course, the various examination tips that have been made available by this particular academy, Starry Gold Academy. I have no doubt in my mind that the examination will be a walkover. Then, having said that, I want you to bear in mind that when we're looking at the national income and, of course, the measurement, you must bear in mind some factors that are very germane. when they talk about the GDP, for instance, GDP, gross domestic products, the national income, and how do you measure? So all these are very, very germane. You must be very sure that you are on top of it. Then two, you must be able to know what are various ways, the national mean incomes are measured. Might be looking at it as from the total output measurement. You look at it from the total output measurement. What are the parameters that you must take into consideration when you are looking at it from the total output measurement? Then you also must look at the income method when it comes to measuring the national income. Then, of course, I've come across in the past questions as well, various a situation whereby questions are asked, given some figures and you're asked to use maybe say expenditure method approach to calculation of the national income. And if that is the case, it becomes very imperative that you are aware of what should you exclude, and of course, what should be added.
Where did it stop?
From macro or where to go to not access
Okay, we have to go and change.
Mm.
Can get another key.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yes.
go. So start from the beginning. So we have to generate another key.
Yeah.
Don't do the video.
I just want to put done now.
Okay.
I have to close one because this is the one that is having issue. No.
Just concept first.
Which am I supposed to open myself? This is already there.
Control A.
firm. So, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I guess maybe little network challenges, but I believe the thing has been fully restored now. Maybe I quickly go over the macroeconomic analysis. I remember I was talking to you about the microeconomic analysis, which is an essential aspect of our economics and financial markets question or topic or subject, as the case may be, which of course I've explained to have dealt with the theory of demand and supply, the elasticities and various or variations and the factors responsible for movement along the line or shift in demand or supply, as the case may be. And of course, I remember I did mention about elasticities of demand, elasticities of supply. When it comes to elasticity of demand, when is it elastic? When is it inelastic? What can you do when demand is elastic? When it is inelastic? What are the application? We may not bother about that here because at level 2 you'll be dealing with that. And of course, also mentioned about the utility. I talked about the utility, which deals with the satisfaction. And when we talk about the utility, we talk about the satisfaction the consumer derives, from the unit of a product. I mentioned as well, the aspect that has to do with diminishing marginal utility. Because as you take more, let's say even drinking water, the first glass of water you drink, for instance, you see how you feel when you are thirsty. When you take another glass, it may not be, satisfiable like the first one. By the time you are taking the third or fourth cup, you discover you get to a point, the marginal utility getting towards zero. That's the kind of a thing. Then also mention, of course, the theory of production. And I did mention, things that are very germane in this area: variable cost, and of course the fixed cost. And as you look at that, the cost of production, and we say cost is fixed, especially within a given period, because the law tells us that at a very long run, all costs are variable. Variable in the short run, yes, that is, as the quantity of production goes up, the cost also, because it's directly proportional. So that's when we talk about variable, then fixed for a particular level. If any addition production or product is to be produced, then it means then the fixed cost will be altered. Then if that is the case, then we have what we call total revenue. And of course, at the point where the total revenue is equal to total revenue, total cost becomes a point of marginal revenue or marginal cost too. We have a point of what they call equilibrium and all that, as the case may be. So you need to know what this entails. And having said that, I went ahead to mention the various market structure. And the various market structure, what are we talking about? The private competitive market, we talk about monopoly, we talk about oligopoly and all sorts. And you have to bear in mind the various characteristics of each of these markets and all that. So these are being tested one way or the other, but the examiner will bring it in such a way that will make you so that you will be expected rather to identify what particular market they are talking about. And especially, like I mentioned, when you look at a question talking about a free exit or entry, free exit, and all that, you know right in your mind that that refers to perfect market. So this is the kind of a thing we are talking about. So you must be able to have idea of all this as you are going in for these exams, even at this level. Applications of these various principles may not be necessary because of the way the exams is structured at this level. Like I said, purely objective, but you are expected to be able to distinguish one particular market from the other, one particular theory from the other. And I haven't said that I mentioned about the macroeconomic analysis aspect of this particular course is very, very germane. Questions have been set in quantitative terms and of course qualitative terms. Qualitative in the sense that it does not require calculations. Quantitative whereby you may be given some data and you are asked to calculate, to make some computation, to see which of the options among various figures that have been produced. And when we deal with the national income, like I mentioned, and of course the measurement, you must be able to bear in mind with the various methods for calculating national equilibrium for any given economy. And of course, also mentioned that when you are looking at the national income, some few things are very, very germane. For instance, you consider the factors like the GDP, for instance, gross domestic product. Is it at the factor cost or at market price? You must be able to distinguish between the two. You must be able to tell us, or rather to distinguish between gross national product, that's GNP, and of course, the gross domestic product. Is important for you to know the difference between the two. And having said that, you must be able to know how is this national income measured? How is it measured? And like I mentioned before, the network was trying to be funny. I did say principally we have three methods of measuring national income. For instance, we talk about the income method, we talk about the expenditure method, and of course we have the output method. Right. Okay. When it is income method, when we talk about the income method, for instance, we say the main is given as y is equal to YW plus TX, minus TX rather, okay, or rather, what I mean is this. We have, using income method is given as y is equal to YW plus YR plus YL plus YP. In other words, the income from wages, income from rent, income from interest, income from profit. So these are the things that will make up the income method of what? Of calculating the national income, right? And of course, if you are looking at it from the expenditure method, you are looking at it from the expenditure method, we have the Y, that is to give you C plus I. You remember where C is the consumption, Y is the income, C is the consumption, and I there will give you the investment. All right, so you must bear that in mind. And other factors that are relevant here will be, let me put it much more comprehensively. Say Y, for instance, okay, we give you what? C plus I plus G plus X minus M. In other words, the national income, which is represented by the figure Y there, is equal to consumption plus investment plus government expenditure plus export minus import. X there is export, while M is import. You must be able to ensure that if you comes across some figures that have anything to do with this, you are able to bring them together and come up with what national income figure should be. Depends on what you are asked to compute. And of course, if it is output method, similar thing applies. Then you must be able to compute the income method from any given data. These are being tested at this level severally. Hardly any diet you will not come across one or two questions from this area being tested from different angles. Either you are asked to calculate this or to calculate that, or they have described it and you are expected to identify and to pick which one actually represents, whether it's expenditure method or output method or income method, as the case may be. Now, the one other thing that is also very relevant at this level is the issue that has to do with the banking sector. The banking sector, that is the monetary system, the prices and the inflations, what should be done. Okay, under the economic growth, on the central bank rather, here what you come across for the central bank, you have to know what is the role of central bank in any economy. What is the responsibility of the central bank to other banks in any given economy? And you'll bear in mind the role as the lender of the last resort. For instance, is the banker's bank and many other things which I know you have had or you must have on your fingertips. These are some of the things that you must bear in mind. Then too, you must also bear in mind that the role that central bank plays in an economy, which is basically managing the economic activities of the country from the financial perspective. In other words,
The thing was,
it is not coming up as well.
and the thing paused now, and I just checked it now.
Okay, maybe I've not been paying attention. I will have seen it myself.
Yeah, you're not checking now. I'm watching you from there.
No.
If the thing pause, I know. Hello, how are you? I was actually busy.
Alright. So, like I said, another aspect of the macroeconomic analysis, like I was trying to say, has to do with the monetary system, prices, inflations, and all that. And you must know what are the functions of money in any given economy. You must bear in mind the reasons for holding money, for instance. Like, for instance, for speculative reasons. You hold money for speculative reasons. for transactionary motive, and of course for precautionary motive. These are various reasons for holding money. So it's important that you must have idea of what is. Remember, you must also be able to know what are the likely functions of money. It's very important. And for instance, like medium of exchange, like the unit of account or value, for instance, like store of value, as the case may be. It's very important for you to know all these things. And of course, you must know the attributes of money, because all these are being tested one way or the other. And they may tell you, they'll put a question that the functions of money includes the following, except medium of exchange, unit of value, store of value, divisibility. And in that kind of a question, you should bear in mind that divisibility is not at all function of money. It is an attribute of money. This is a typical example, typical examination question, which I've come across. You must be able to know. And except you know what are the functions of money, you'll not be able to distinguish which is which. You will just be panting and sweating inside their condition. So you must be able to be on top of it. You must know the types of money. The coin or currency, the deposit money, the demand deposit, as the case may be. Quasi money, what is quasi money, the nature of money, and all that. So then you also must be able to know. Now somebody may ask you that, money as for instance, the main nature of money includes the following. Number one, for instance, legal tender, must be that like a token money, fiat money, for instance, and of course, unit of value and things like that. So you should be able to know that unit of value definitely will not be the nature of money by any sense. That of course becomes a function of value, and that becomes your answer, because you see, except all these, except. So except what? Unit of value. So that becomes your answer, as the case may be. And of course, you must be able to know the types of money. M1, definition of money, which we call narrow definition of money, and M2, which we call the broad definition of money. So I've mentioned to you why people host money, which is of course for precautionary measure and all that. Precautionary measure, we talk about the speculative measure, and for transactionary motives. These are various reasons why people hold money. You must be able to know that. Then one other thing that is very crucial in this type of examination, for instance, this economics and financial market, is that you must be able to know what is growth and what is development. What are the characteristics of growth? What are the characteristics of development? It's very important for you to be able to distinguish this, and you must be able to tell the examiner what are the things, that will constitute growth in an economy, and of course the development in any economy. Now, then also employment. That's another thing that is very important. You must be able to know what is the Philip curve of a theory of employment. What is it talking about? You must be able to know different types of employment, that is cyclical, is it structural unemployment, or employment, unemployment. I mean to say, okay, fine. At what stage we say, okay, a country is underemployed? What type of unemployment that the country is having? Is it cyclical? Is it structural? Is it seasonal unemployment? And all that. Then at what period, at what stage we say a country have what we call full employment? You must be able to know that full employment, So what does it entail? Then they may be able to ask you a question, or maybe put certain parameters and tell you that, okay, this represents dash. Is it unemployment? Is it structural unemployment or seasonal unemployment and all that? And especially a situation whereby at particular period of the year people are gainfully employed and maybe at another time no employment. Definitely that is a seasonal employment seasonal unemployment. For instance, this is the kind of a thing that scenario actually represents. That is one of the typical examination something. So what is it talking about? Then you must also be able to know what we call business cycle. Business cycle. You must be able to know the characteristics of business cycle. And usually, business cycle entails three characteristics. There's a period that we call it recession in any economy. There's another period you call it recovery. Then there's a period that you call it boom. That is a period when things will come up. And of course, you must bear in mind they may give you a particular diagram even in your exams and tell you what does this actually represent. And that may be the cyclical kind of diagram that tells you a typical business cycle. So you must be able to identify what that is all about. Then number two, you must be able to know the period. A particular period may be highlighted in the diagram, and they may ask you to state out of the options A, B, C, D given to you what that highlighted portion represent. Is it period of recovery? Is it period of recession? Is it period of boom? And things like that. These are some of the things that you are expected to be able to know in this examination. And if you are the type that you have familiarized yourself with past questions, some of these things that I am saying will not be new to you at all. Then one other thing that you may come across is what are the likely policies that may be relevant in a situation that an economy is passing through a recession. Okay? If that is the case, what kind of measures should the government adopt? Monetary or physical measure? Then should it be expansion or contraction? Okay, if it is expansion, what happens when there is expansionary kind of policy? When there is contractionary kind of policy, what does each of these represent? You must be able to know, because in the exams, the examiner may come up with something that depicts a particular or a scenario that depicts a particular policy measure that needs a particular policy measure. And they want you to pick one of the options that they have provided to tell us what such actually represents. All right. Then the next one I also want to mention, still under macroeconomic analysis, it has to do with the interest rates. If it is interest rates, yes, what do you do in a period of high interest rate? Interest rate, yes, what does it imply? What is the effect in the economy when interest is high? Definitely, the level of investment will become very low because the rate at which people borrow money will be very, very high. So the investment will be down. So the various economic activities will become very, very dull. And if you look at Nigeria, this is a typical example of what we have in Nigeria at the moment, because the cost of borrowing is very, very high. I wonder, I was talking to somebody recently, then he was talking about, is it rent money or something like that, for instance, talking about, the rate of interest that they are charging. And that is the kind of a thing. If you go to conventional bank, you may not be able to get anything to borrow. But if somebody may direct you to any of these various organizations set up here and there, and what are they charging? Some may be charging 10% flat, some 5%, 9%. What kind of business do you want to do to be able to pay back the interest and repay the capital? And that's why we see a lot of business failure. You see a lot of things that the business are not growing in Nigeria. So, these are some of the things that you will be expected as a chartered stockbrokers in embryo. These are the things that you are expected to know, because I do know that by level 2 you'll be able to see the other side of this, because application of these things into real life situation will be tested at that particular level. So it will be expected that you are on top of it. You'll be able to advise your client. You'll be to take a specific decision, or either the government is your client or whosoever, so for them to take a specific decision at any particular point in time. And of course, for the financial markets, it's important at this level that you must be able to know what are the what we're talking about in financial market. We want to know whether we're talking about maybe the primary market, for instance. We want to know primary market. We want to know secondary market. What do we do at the primary market? What do we do as a secondary market? That kind of a thing. What kind of capital do you raise in the primary market, and then of course the capital market, and then of course the secondary market? So these are kind of things that you are expected to know. And various funds that you can raise. For instance, there's something that they call IPO, might be initial public offer. For instance, you may want to know, might be offer for sale, offer for all manner of methods whereby you can raise capital in the capital market. These are the things that the financial markets actually deal with. And what is the position of the financial market in Nigerian economy? Some questions may be asked, and we tell you that okay, maybe where you have the various short or medium time instruments. What do they depict? Is it capital market, or your capital market, or the other aspect of the market we're talking about? So all these are things that you are expected to know. And having said that, I want to take pain to quickly move to see the third part of this important paper. This third part has to do with the quantitative analysis. And of course, and the statistics. Quantitative analysis and statistics. In the quantitative analysis and statistics, there are certain things that are very, very germane that you must bear in mind. In this aspect of the paper, like I said, about 34 questions usually come out. There are 34 to 35, 36 questions come out from this aspect. And what are they testing? They want to test, or the examiner want to test the how quantitatively biased are you. However, they are not expecting that you are a mathematician in any case, but there are some basic fundamental manipulation computations that you are expected to know. Typical example, for instance, is what we call finance of mathematics. Typical example here, we talk about the time value of money. Time value of money. And this has to say that, 1 naira today and 1 naira tomorrow is definitely not the same. That is it. And why is it? Because of the inflations. 2, because of uncertainties that are associated with the future. So, in other words, whatever that you want to get in the next 5 years, maybe you are expecting to get about 1 million naira the next 2 years. What do you want to do? What is the what? The present value of that particular 1 million you are expecting to get in the next 1 year or 2 years, as the case may be. What is the what? what is the value now. And that has to do what we call discounting in mathematics. So you must be able to know how to discount a particular figure. And in this case, some of the things you come across is maybe we call a future value. You come across what we call the future value, okay, of a particular situation or an amount or investment. What is the future value? What is the present value? You must be able to know. Then you must be able to know what is the methods that is being adopted, assuming that money you are investing, it is simply on simple interest. If it is on a simple interest, what are you expecting? What is the interest element you are expecting? See, in a month's time or in a year's time on that particular investment outlay, what do you intend to get in the next 5 years? Then, number two, if it is compound interest, on compound interest, what is it testing? It's trying to test, that the interest that is generated after a year is being reinvested with the capital to generate interest in another year. And that is what we come across on compound interest. So in that wise, we want to know at a particular given period, what is it supposed to be? And all the various simple formulas that we normally use, we must not forget. Simple interest, for instance, we will usually say principal times rate times interest all over 100. That will give you the interest. Then if you want to know the future value, you know that interest must be added to the principal to give you the value. Simple as it is. Such a thing, it came across in one examination, of course. If you look at the examiner's evaluation, you see that many students still failed it. Many students on that year, many students still failed it. Then when it's come to compound interest, they will say, okay, P will give is equal to A into 1 plus R raised to power N, for instance. You're right? So if that is the case, then you do what do you say? You say that, we say, what do you call it? P, for instance, we give you what? We give us A into 1 plus R raised to power N, where B becomes your principal that you are expecting at the period given, at the given period that we'll be expecting. A will be the amount you are investing. While R is the interest rate, is it 10% per annum, 2% per annum, and N will be the number of years, that is the period in question. And I want to sound a note of warning here. Please, in examination, there may be a situation whereby they say the interest is twice a year, or thrice a year, or 10, 12 times a year, or twice a year, or quarterly. If it is twice a year, this R must be all over 2. R all over 2. Right? If it is quarterly, then it becomes R all over 4. Okay? And if it is monthly, then it becomes 1 all over 12. And that is the way it goes. So you must bear that in mind and ensure that you factor that in your computation. Definitely, examiners are very tricky. They are very tricky. They will sometimes do their calculation based on what the question requires. And they will do other ones that will show that if it is quarterly, they will put answer that will show yearly, half yearly, quarterly, and monthly. So if you are the type that didn't read the question where to see that it is quarterly, you just use yearly. You'll definitely see an answer that represents what you have gotten. And you'll be tempted to, you will have picked it. And you'll be thinking, oh yes, I've slapped CIS. Now lie. You have not slapped anything. You only slapped yourself. So please, I implore you, my dear students, take cognizance of the various simple things that, may want to cause yama. I know God will guide and remind you all these various things as you pay particular attention to them as well. Also, still on this mathematics of finance, you bear in mind what we call annuity. And what is annuity? I've come across questions they ask where you have a regular payment for a period, maybe at the end of the period, for a certain period, this and that. What is it called? So, in this case, you must bear in mind what we call annuity due, annuity due, and when we call ordinary annuity, when it's ordinary annuity, when it's annuity due, then what are they all about? You must be able to know. And when the annuity is perpetual, what is it talking about? All these various simple things and various simple formulas are very important for you to quickly calculate and get what your answer must be. They never mentioned that there's what we call capital investment. Capital investment appraisal. This is another aspect that is very crucial, and they always bring questions in this area in the examination. Capital investment appraisal. And what are they trying to test? They want us to evaluate. They want us to evaluate a particular project, for instance. They want us to evaluate to see how viable that project is, so that you'll be able to know what a kind of advice you will give to your clients, as the case may be. You remember some of these various investment appraisal method that we always use. There are some of them that they are how will I describe it now? How will I describe it now? Anyway, I know I will remember as we go on. Some of the methods, like I said, will be payback period. For instance, you look at the payback period. You want to look at the one that has to do with net present value rather. Okay, then there's another one, we call it IRR, internal rate, to go and calculate without adding back. Unfortunately, sorry, you must have undone yourself. So it's like undoing yourself. You must bear in mind that the depreciation must be added back to whatever profit streams they have given to you for each year for you to get the cash flow before you compute. And of course, you can do what we call it cumulative, whatever, so that you'll be able to know at what years, the 2 years and 6 months, 2 years and 3, whatever. You can now compare that with other projects and see which one gives you the shortest period of recouping your capital. That is the payback period. Then the net present value. In the net present value method, what we are testing, basically, they want to see. You want to ensure that you are given the cost of capital, and by the time you discount the various inflows, cash inflows, and compare it with the various cash flow, if it is positive, then it means that project is viable. If it is negative, it means that project is not viable, so it must be dropped. And there are situations whereby you may have two projects that are both, the two of them are what? The two of them are having, the two of them are having what I call a positive NPV. If it is positive NPV, what do? It means you look at the one that has higher positive NPV, and that's the one you will recommend for your customer or your client, as the case may be, that he must take of the various projects that are available, bearing in mind every other factors, ceteris paribus, we call it in economics, all things being equal. Okay, now the next one we want to mention is IRR, that is internal rate of return. Under internal rate of return, what do you get? Under internal rate of return, what we are talking about, we normally call it a trial whatever method. In other words, what we are saying is that by the time you calculate it, it must be able to produce zero. In other words, the cost, the internal rate of method is the particular rate that will make the total of the cash inflow, discounted value, to be equal to what? to be equal to the total of the outflow. And of course, there's what we call trial and error method. We normally use calculate, your MPV, either at a lower rate, you calculate at another rate, then you interpolate. And that will be able to, whatever rate that comes, you come up with, gives you the IRR. So this is very, very crucial. You must take note of that. And the various merits and demerits of each of these methods of valuing or whatever, evaluating your project or appraising your projects. Very, very germane. Now, having said that, I also want to remind you that there's what we call profitability index. It's another method that we normally use. You must bear that also in mind. It's very, very crucial. You must be on top of it when it comes to capital investment appraisal in quantitative analysis and statistics. Now, having said that, I also want to mention that you must bear in mind your differentiation calculus this time around. In the calculus, what do? You must be able to bear in mind what it means for you to calculate the point of maximization or minimization, as the case may be. First derivative, for instance, let's assume that we have TR. TR is equal to what? Is equal to, let's assume 2q raised to power 3 plus 30q. Let me put it properly. I said TR is equal to what? TR is equal to, let's assume 5q raised to power 3 plus 2q, or rather plus might be 50q. So now the first differentiation or the first derivative will give you the TR all over the Q. Okay? TR all over the Q. And that will give you what? You remember 3 times 5 gives you 15. Okay? Q raised to power 3 minus what? Minus 1. Plus what? Q here carry 1 times 1 times 50. That's 50 all over Q raised to power 1 minus 1. Of course, any number raised to power 0 is 1. So, and what would that give you? What you have here now will give you dq, for instance. dq, for instance, that is the q. dq tr will give you what? 15q raised to power what? Raised to power t, or 2 rather, plus what? Plus 50. They may now tell you Q is so calculate what is going to be your marginal revenue. It's just a matter of substitution, and that is all. And there are another situation, they may give you the function, the demand function. And demand function is like the price, and they give you the quantity, and you have to find the revenue. Revenue will be price times quantity. And if that is the case, then they'll give you, okay, if Q is now so, calculate what will be the total revenue. Excuse me. So these are the kind of things that you come across when it comes to calculus and differentiation. At this level, usually the second derivative may be necessary, but in most cases, it is not usually tested at this particular stage. So they just want you to be able to make simple applications of differential calculus, in getting solution to some of the live questions. What are you going to do at that particular moment? Then the next thing I also want to mention here is what? Is measure of location. I want to talk about measure of location, measure of partition, and of course, the central measure rather of central tendency. Measure of central tendency. And what we are referring to basically here, this with statistical aspect of the course. Statistical aspect of the course. So here you must be able to know how that any figure, raw figure is called data. When it has not been organized, nothing has been done, is raw data. By the time you begin to organize on summary and do all kinds of things with it, then it becomes informative. Then it can begin to make meaning to you. And why do we need to study this particular aspect of the course? Because it facilitates results and conclusions to be drawn from any given situation or any given data or scenario, as the case may be. That and many other, uses. Then you must be able to know what is population, which of course is the entire group of people or objects or events, as the case may be. You must be able to know what sample represents. Of course, sample, we say, is a subgroup of selected or is also selected form or group sub-selected rather from a particular given population. It is a kind of subset of the things or of a particular given population. So, and if that is the case, one may need to know, or you may be asked, some of the reasons, or rather some of the reasons or advantages of using sample other than entire population are the ABCD. ABC. They give you some specific merits, except that is very common in this examination. You have to be very, very careful when you are attempting any of something. You have to bear in mind what is the examiner actually looking for, right? Then you must know what we call parameter, which is a numerical quantity summarizing a particular population. You must be able to know what we refer to as variable. And of course, a variable is a characteristics or attributes or property of an individual. So you must be able to, that is something that can be used to distinguish a particular, given what? A particular given population, right? Then you must also be able to know when a variable is a continuous one, it is a discrete one, when it is constant, when it is dependable or independent variable, constant variable, independent variable, as the case may be. These are some of the things that you need to know when it comes to dealing with statistics. Now, having said that, you must be able to know the classification of data. You must be able to remember what are the various sources. Where do you get them? Primary data, where do you get them? Secondary data, where do you get them? What are the advantages? What are the disadvantages? Then we look at type of statistics, for instance, the descriptive statistics. We talk about the inferential statistics. So, if it is descriptive, what is it talking about? If it is inferential, that is the time whereby you can make inference, you can make deduction, is an analytical type, whereby you can infer certain things from it. Descriptive, we want to, just as the name implies, it describes a particular situation. We call no wonder we call it descriptive statistics. Then you must bear in mind, method of sampling. What are the method of sampling that are available? For instance, we talk about probability sampling, then non-probability sampling. If it is probability sampling, what we refer to as a probability sampling? And of course, you remember it must be the type that where every element is capable of being selected. Right. And of course, when it is no probability sampling, is a situation whereby the element or units included in the samples are not determined by any chance, but rather conscious efforts by the investigator in selecting, the item in question. Then one thing that readily comes to mind here is this: probability sampling techniques. What are the types of probability sampling techniques, for instance? Random, systematic, stratified, and cluster. These are probability sampling methods. You must be able to know what is random sampling, systematic sampling, stratified sampling, cluster sampling. These are the various methods of sampling that you are expected to familiarize yourself with. Take note, if you look at, I think, 2013, 2014, in the objectives, there are situations they put that the following sampling methods are what? Are sampling techniques, except, and what do they put there? They put there systematic sampling, random sampling, systematic sampling, stratified sampling, and quota sampling. And I want to tell you, quota sampling is not random method, or is not a method of random sampling. No, not at all. Quota is a known probability sampling method. So what are known probability sampling methods? One of them is quota sampling, whereby, just like Nigeria, we have quota system, whereby you say, okay, maybe every you want to give scholarship to about 100 people, and we have 36 states of the federation. You say, okay, fine, might be one from each state of the federation, and Federal Capital Territory Abuja, or 3. So and that is the quota, for as the case may be. There's another one we call is convenience sampling. Yeah, so then we talk with judgment sampling, accidental sampling. These are known probability sampling methods. Several locations, they have set questions on this, one way or the other. So the candidates will be expected to know which one, for instance, is probability sampling and non-probability sampling. Please, you must be able to distinguish between them. Now, let's look at presentation of this data in statistical form. Here, I want to remind you, distinguished students, of the following. Number one, you have what we call frequency distribution. And then when we talk about frequency distribution, you bear in mind the scores. And of course, frequency, just as the name implies, that implies the rate at which that element is constant. Let's assume we have 10 figures. Maybe we have 2 comes up 2 times. 2 comes up 2 times. And we have maybe 5 comes up 5 times. And we have maybe 1 comes up about 3 times. So if you put them together, that's 10. So we have 2, 3, 5. So with their various period of occurrence, then you can put it together. And when you put it together, you get the tally. You remember, you get your frequency. And from that, you bear in mind, you can go ahead and calculate Since it is not the grouped type, you can look at what we call relative frequency of that particular information. I haven't, sorry, what do I call it? Relative frequency. You can look at what I call cumulative frequency. All this you must be able to know what it's all about, especially when it comes to grouped data. So it's very important. There you may be asked to come and to calculate what I call histogram. It's very all those simple things we did in mathematics done in our secondary school days. They are very germane at this level. Even at your OND or BSc, you discover you must have come across them again. That you may be asked to calculate what we call histogram or frequency polygon. So it's important for you to know how to calculate that. And of course, I've come across a situation, excuse me, whereby they drew something that looks like not look like, but it was an ogive, and they asked the candidate to identify, that figure, and there they put in their various answer. They put their histogram, they put ogive, and all manner of things like that. And of course, it is ogive. I see a lot of students still picking wrong thing. So these are things that you must know. You must be able to remember the presentation in bar chart, the presentation in pie chart. They may put all the pie chart and identify, highlight a particular portion and tell you to calculate what is the degree. These are kind of things. And of course, the bar chart may be simple. It may be the multiple type. You must be able to know what they are talking about. And of course, the component bar chart and all that. Then I've mentioned about pie chart, identification, and asking you to calculate. And you bear in mind that when it is pie chart, of course, it will have to be in degree, 360 degree, everything over 360 degree. So these are the kind of things that you must bear in mind. And having said that, then we go ahead to look at something that is very important when it comes to presentation of data. You must not forget your arithmetic mean, your geometric mean, and your harmonic mean. They are also very germane at this particular level. They may carry out one small computation and ask you to state whether it is harmonic or it is geometric or it is arithmetic. Or they might even ask you to use geometric mean to calculate and tell us what is the geometric mean of the figures above. These are all the simple things that you come across, and when you are on top of it, you discover that you make the exams is just a walkthrough. Then also, I want to remind you about the aspect of it that has to do, we call it calculation of what do we call it? A central tendency. Here, what are we talking about? Or measure of central tendency, rather. What are we talking about? We are talking about the calculation of mean, median, and mode. And I came across a question, was it 20? It came out in 2011 March. They repeated it in 2013 September. The second question came out as well in 2016. It came out in 2016. And they repeated that same question. They repeated it in 2018. What is it all about? Just talking about the central tendency. That what are they saying? That of all the following, we call this we refer to as the measure of central tendency, and they put there mean, ogive, this, that, and what they are talking about. The only thing that has to do with area of central tendency there is mean, and that is all. And that's all you put there, and you just pick it, and that's all you are home and dry. So you must be able to bear in mind too, on that mean too, is being very frequent is at this particular level. I must be very frank. Mean, mode, and median. There are times they may tell you, maybe there are 3 students, excuse me, one got 35 marks, another 2 got 25 marks. This one got this, and that mark. What is the mean? And mean, you bear in mind, is average. So you are expected to know what to say. Right? Then we also come across, or rather you are expected to know at this particular moment, the stage rather, as you compute mean, how to compute mean, mode, and media. You must be able to bear in mind what we call the area measurement of dispersion. Measurement of dispersion. And in this case, what they are talking basically has to do with variance. If you know the mean, then you must know the variation from the mean. That is, your mean, variance. You must be able to bear in mind how do you calculate variance. Then you must also be able to bear in mind a simple method of calculating what we call your standard deviation. That is deviating from the mean. Deviating from the mean, standard deviation. How do you calculate? The simple methods of calculating. When it is grouped, excuse me, and it is ungrouped data, how do you calculate? Where do you need assuming or you don't? Especially at this level, you don't need any of those assuming or whatever. Especially this simple computation of mean, mode, media, variance, standard deviation. You are expected to know and have them offhand, because these are the things that are being tested. And if the student does not know, oh, I'm sorry, but I believe that is definitely that is not your portion. No, the Spirit of God will remind you what you need to put in place in this examination. It's going to be a walkover for you in the name of Jesus Christ. So I will say that bear in mind the coefficient of variation. Coefficient of variation. What are the things you need to compute? How do you compute the coefficient of variation? Is very, very important. Then I also want to mention quickly the measure of partition. Okay, on the measure of partition, what are we talking about? We are talking about the quantiles, we are talking about the decile, and we're talking about the percentile. Quantile talks about distribution being divided into four. First quartile, second quartile, third quartile. That's why we call second quantile, third quantile. The next one I mentioned is decile. Decile means that particular information given to you divided into 10. So decile might be the 5th decile and things like that. Excuse me. And of course the percentile, when the information divided into 100. So that is what it's all about. You must be able to compute these various levels, right? Computation of lower quantile and upper quantile is very, very germane. You must be able to know the simple method of calculating the first quantile, second quantile, as the case may be. Right. So, having said that, I also want to remind you, I've told about decile and about the percentile. And let me mention, for instance, you may be asked, for instance, the 88th percentile of a given figure is this. So, for instance, 88th percentile of 48. What is it all about? All you need to do is to calculate, what is 80% of the figures they have given to you. Whatever answer you get will be the 88th percentile. So it's important, and usually these things they make use of it to arrive at some specific information. Now, having said that, you must bear in mind, the correlation coefficient, is very, very important. The next thing I want to mention as well is the probability. Probability, which has to do with the game of chance. Probability. Remember, if you carry a die and is thrown up, what is the probability? That is the chance, the likelihood that the head will appear or tail will appear. This is probability. And let us assume it is a die, or you have, if you pick a die, what is the probability that what do you call it? That one will appear, and you know that has six distinct sides, and that 5 will appear, 2 will appear, 10 will appear, 6 will appear, as the case may be. This is probability. This also topic has been tested and is being tested severally. In fact, there is virtually any exams, even when you get to level 2, you come across it as well. Especially at this level 1, they bring it virtually every diet. You will see about 2 or 3 questions on probability, looking at it from different angles. So you must be able to calculate when, for instance, when is the probability that A and B, that is probability of addition. What is the formula? You must be able to know how to go about it. That is when of this probability that A or B, that is probability of the probability of A and B, that is addition. A or B, that will tell you probability of A and B less probability of A and B. So these are the things that you must be able to know. And a very simple question will be put there, but if you don't remember the formula, then it becomes issue. So you must be able to go and revise, take note of those small things in each of these various topics as we mentioned them, and of course as they appear in your scheme or the syllabus as the case may be for this particular level. Right. Then you must be able to know when they tell you that something is mutually exclusive. If it is mutually exclusive, it means the two of them cannot come up the same time. When you throw up a die, for instance, it's not possible for you to have 3 and 3 appearing the same time. There is what we call mutually exclusive event. The appearance of 3 must have precluded appearance of 4. So it's either 3 or 4. So if it is now thrown up 2 times or 3 times, what is the probability that 3 will come up twice? Then that becomes probability of 3 coming up first time, second time. That's 3 all over 6. Okay, first time, second time. So that is probability of addition. And of course, when it is not mutually exclusive, then you know what that means. All these things that we talk about under probability are the things that you must bear in mind. Now, having said that, I want to also speak briefly on your regression analysis. And of course on time series. What you are expected to know is that basic simple formula on regression analysis. At this level, there is nothing complex that they have been bringing. Actually, regression analysis, questions on it have not been coming up as such. Other than I want to ask, can I remember now how it has been tested on 1 or 2 occasions, from past questions. When I check it, if I come across it again, I'll post it to your these things. Just try to ensure you check before the exams, because certain things we come across, we'll be posting them to you. Some of the examination tips and all that as time goes on before the examinations. Then also one other thing we must we must bear in mind is time series. Other time series analysis, what are the things that you must come across. You must be able to bear in mind when it comes to time series, a situation whereby they will give you the base and of course another period. They may ask you to project. Let's assume, for instance, Year 1 is year 20, let's say year 2015, 16, 17, 18, 18 for instance. They may give you a time series of what sales had been between 2015 and 2018, and it may ask you to project what the sales is likely to be in 2019, 2020, 2021, as the case may be, given a specific parameter. It's not really strictly, pattern recognition or whatever. It's based on computations of say based on what has happened in the past, so you are able to project into future based on based on some simple calculations. So these are also noted, I've come across in the past examinations. So you have to ensure you take note of that. Then one other area or two other areas I want to mention before we round off for tonight is the area of optimization of functions. This has to do with linear programming, but at this level, very simplistic is what is being tested, if at all it is tested at all. At times, they may give a particular descriptions and ask you to represent it in a linear programming. So this is the kind of a thing that you may come across. And let's not forget, I mentioned, or rather, maybe it skipped my mind to mention what do you call it now? Anyway, it skipped my mind. Once I remember, I will come to it. So this optimization, like I was saying, you must bear in mind that you take note of that very well. And what basically do you do? Representation of a particular description or a scenario, in mathematical form. And there you say your z is equal to x plus y, and x and y will be defined. And that may be the objectives of the function. And these and some little things around it are the things you'll come across under optimization. And of course, linear programming, optimizations, they all work hand in hand. Of course, representations like I mentioned, and then what do you call it? In the linear representation and solving the mathematics. And one other thing that has skipped my mind is solving mathematical problem using simultaneous equation or whatever. So that also is a very common phenomenon at this level. So you have to bear in mind and of course try and remember very well some of these methods of solving questions in simultaneous using simultaneous equation, and of course not just or any other method as well. Once you are able to represent the situation presented to you in mathematical form, then you'll be able to solve the question either using simultaneous equation or whichever method after the presentation to solve the questions and getting the answer out. This and some few other things, you will come across when it comes to the what do you call it? When it comes to quantitative analysis and statistics. So you must bear in mind that some of these things are taken cognizance of. I must not forget to mention the matrix operations. These also have been coming up regularly. Matrix operation. And you must bear in mind what we call identity matrix. Identity matrix may be something like this. I is equal to what? 1001. This is a typical identity, matrix. In other words, the main diagonal is 1, while others are 0. And of course, the matrix must be what? Must be a square matrix. It may have a square, might be 2 by 2. And you remember in matrix, bear in mind that in matrix, it is what? Row times column. It is very, very important. You multiply your row by your column. For instance, when you are doing additions, you are in matrix. They must have the same elements. Say, for instance, what are we talking about? Let's assume A. Let's assume A. A is equal to what? Let's say A is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right. And we have B. B is equal to what? B is equal to might be 4, 5, 6, 2. And we have 3, 2, 5. If you look at this, you will discover that the two matrices be given here, they have the same elements. They are, two of them are 2 by 3 matrices. In other words, 2 rows and 3 columns. So it becomes easier if you ask you A plus B. All you need to do is to add the element in A with the corresponding element in B, and you get your answer. And if for instance it is multiplication matrix, you must bear in mind that a multiplication matrix, let's say for instance we have 2.
Wait, hold on. I want to delete it.
So
Summarize. Your turn is up. I'm seeing there's something it wasn't supposed to be there.
And it's me that wrote. I said I want to undo that.
This one here.
And what I've written.
No, it's not the written one, so I'm even talking. I'm talking about that level 2.
No, it's not supposed to be. Oh yeah, I know. I'm not going
I'm
that.
just discovering it now.
Okay. I thought you did say it. I know it because, but this is what I'm working on. I want to remove it. It's control something.
Right.
Okay. So, like I was saying, matrix multiplication. Bear in mind that in matrix multiplication, they must have identity. In other words, what I'm trying to say is this: it's row by column. For instance, if A is equal to 2, 3, 6, B is equal to 2, 2, 4, 5. Okay, 2, 4, 5. So, what I'm saying is this: if you now have AB, that is A times B, will give you what? 2, 3, 6 by what? by 2, 4, 5. All right. Now, for you to know what the likely answer will be after presentation. A, for instance, A is what? 3 row by 1. That is 3 times 1. And B is equal to what? 1 row by what? By 3 column. That's 1 by 3. So you can see 1 and what? 1. Which means whatever your answer will be at the end of the day, your AB will give you 3 by 3 matrix. I know as I do it, you must have flashback to some of the things you watched in the video lectures, and you'll be able to, reflect on them. And I want you to master that, please. It's very important because various questions have come across, and these have been repeated on several years. Even like those that are on level 2, they've repeated even in the theory aspect or computation aspect. They've asked them to compute this by this and tell us. But at this level, they may tell you whether A and B is doable. Or at times they may tell us to tell that the answer will be the answer of A and B. A times B will be 3 by 3 matrix, 2 by 2 matrix, 3 by 4 matrix, 5 by clinical matrix. So it's now left for you to see what I have just put in place here and to be able to determine what it's all about, what it should be, and what your answer, the correct answer, must be. Now, having said that, I think at this level, we have been able to go through various aspects of the query, to various aspect questions usually come out. And like I've said, I'm not limiting you to anything, please. From the analysis, anatomize, if you will permit me to use that word, the various questions over the years, put them on the spreadsheet, try to see what has come up at one time or the other, which one has been coming out frequently, which of ones have not been really very too much regular or have not come out at all. So these are some of the things that's informed some of these things that we've tried to put together here. And I'm pretty sure, I'm persuaded in my spirit that if you can take pain to, work around these things, definitely the examination will be a walkover. Now, having said that, like I said, few days to the examination, I want to recap what are the things that you are expected to do. Number one, if I were you, I will come up with, if you haven't gotten any, if you have gotten one already, fantastic. Try to have, especially in this quantitative aspect of the something, some of those simple formulas, they are very important for you to take note of them, practice them. Do not read quantitative analysis and statistics the way you will read your economics. No. Please practice those questions. When you see the past questions and the suggested solution, some of them we have posted from CIS and some other examination bodies of equal status. We have tried to see those past questions, either ICAN, ACCA, ACMA, professional body, even in WAEC, you remember, questions are repeated from time to time. That's why students cannot afford to wish away past questions when you are preparing for examination of that particular examination body. So like I've said, don't read quantitative analysis as you read economics or as you read law or ethics. Work those questions yourself. When you have gone through, close your book. Those things you have jotted when you are watching the video, close your book. Look at the question, solve it yourself. Go and check the answer and be sure you are able to get the answer you got or that they got, which you have seen before. This is the way. When you do it like that, walking, I tell you those things you have done. When you see something similar, you will never forget. Number one. Number two, some of the various factors, merits or demerits as the case may be, or the things or the lesson that could be learned from any of those topics. Please, my beloved brothers and sisters, ensure you jot them down, revise them, let them become part and parcel of you. In the examination of this type, let me tell you, in CIS, I know once you enter the examination hall, you are on your own. In fact, the time is so short relative to the questions that you cannot even beep to your colleagues. And you know it's purely computer based. You are not writing anything. And you cannot giraffe into what anybody has done. Once that man answers that question, he presses it and the question disappears. If I himself, except he goes back there, I cannot even remember what either it is A or B or C he has picked in question 2 or question 4. And I tell you that your friend cannot go back to it because he's rushing to see that he finishes the paper, the exams, the questions. So this is the issue. So it's important that you learn to be on your own, be independent. Then, number 2, when it comes to economics and financial markets, something is also very germane. Some of those various computations are very important. Please work those questions yourself. Do not assume, oh yes, I've read it many times, I've crammed it. No, work it yourself and ensure you can get that answer independently. So when you come across similar thing in the examination, of course it will be a walkover. It's very important. And also I want to mention that in economics, please, some of those graphs are factors that determine either the shift or shift in the curve or movement along the line. Ensure you master it. When it comes to production, you must bear in mind what we call, say, the difference curve. What does it postulate? What is it all about? Okay, there is what we call even production frontier. What is production frontier talking about? What are you expected to know? What does it depict in an economy? What is the importance?
You are done. Since
Oh, why did you send me it?
it's 7.
Oh, wow. So that is the situation. So, and of course, in accounting, like I've told you, because you remember I've said this, I only recap. Please do not waste time. I just want to wish you the very best of luck in this examination. I'm pretty sure when we shall meet next diet, you will be writing your level 2 of any of the parts in the CIS examination come September 2019. Definitely not level 1 again. Thank you. God bless you. Shalom. Of the